The top business stories live from the Sky newsroom. The spring statement that definitely isn't a budget, according to the Chancellor, but we'll be looking at what we can actually expect to hear tomorrow. Airlines threaten to sue Heathrow over Friday's shutdown chaos. The game-changing move by Millwall to become the only British football club to launch its own mobile telephone network. Plus, going for growth, while garden centres up and down the country are urging the Chancellor to water down her budgets. Very good afternoon. Welcome to Business Live on this Tuesday with me, Darren McCaffrey. This time tomorrow, the Chancellor will have delivered her first spring statement. The Treasury has made it clear it is by no means a budget, but whatever way you look at it, Rachel Reeves has her work cut out for her, with both Trump's tariffs looming and limited wriggle room thanks to her measures set out in the budget and the overall macroeconomic situation. Let's speak to Matt Swannell. He's Chief Economic Advisor to the EY Item Club. Very good afternoon to you, Matt. And frankly, the background to this spring statement tomorrow it's not great for the Chancellor, is it?
Thank you for having me on, firstly. It's a really tough situation. Growth has been weaker than expected and interest rates have been higher than we thought only 5 months ago. Now, the net effect is that little wiggle room that the Chancellor left against her important fiscal rules in the budget is probably all gone. And that's where we're going to have to see things like the welfare announcements that have been made, or perhaps even spending cuts come in to build back some of that margin for error that the Chancellor needs to keep fiscal policy on track.
And when we look at what's going to be announced tomorrow, it's pretty clear overall that the OBR are not going to be as buoyant about growth as we may well have expected. But we're not expecting any significant changes when it comes to taxation, are we? Or indeed to those fiscal rules, but probably quite strong hints towards government spending, with that likely to be pared back. Is that fair to say, Matt?
I think that's exactly right, and that's what we're looking for. What we'll be looking for tomorrow is, firstly, have any day-to-day spending totals been changed? So how much is available to spend on frontline services? And then secondly, just how much wiggle room has the Chancellor left herself? Because ultimately, that's going to inform whether this debate about how much space there is left against the fiscal rules rumbles on into the spending review in the summer, or even to the budget at the end of this year.
Can you just explain, what is this wriggle room or this headroom that we talk about? Just explain to viewers why it's so important that effectively she's got that buffer.
That's exactly right. So when the Chancellor took over the reins, she set out 2 rules. One of those is that the government will only borrow to invest. And it's projected that rule will be met by £10 billion. Now, that might seem like a lot of money, but in reality, it's a much smaller buffer than has typically been the case, where we've seen chancellors typically leave 25 to £30 billion. And that's important because if that's all gone, it means the government is in risk of not meeting the sort of framework it set itself to keep the public finances on a sustainable footing.
And just very finally, Matt, we've also heard from the Governor of the Bank of England in the last 24 hours to saying that Donald Trump's tariffs and Britain's ageing population are not good for Britain's long-term economic growth either. I mean, you know, the bad news just keeps coming, if you like.
That's right. And I think one thing we have to remember when we look at the fiscal projections is that they're already based on what are already quite optimistic growth forecasts, particularly in the medium term. Our forecasts are maybe for a quarter point weaker growth. And with weaker growth means potentially less tax revenue than is forecast and an even more challenging fiscal backdrop. And that is another thing that we might be looking out for in tomorrow's spring statement. OK, Matt, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Matt Swannell there from the EY Item Club. Thank you. Thank you.
Just going to bring you up to date with a developing story, of course, this afternoon, and that is the continuing furore over those messages sent by senior members of the Trump administration in regards to the targeting of Houthi terrorists. Well, we've had a statement effectively from the White House in the last couple of minutes, which says that Democrats and their allies, their media allies, have seemingly forgotten that President Donald Trump and his national security team successfully killed terrorists who have targeted US troops and disrupted the most consequential shipping routes in the world. This is a coordinated effort to distract from the successful actions taken by President Trump and his administration to make America's enemies pay and keep Americans safe. The Biden administration, set back as a band of pirates with precision-guided Iran-provided weaponry, exacted a toll on one of the most important shipping lanes in the world. So that statement from the White House reiterating that they view very much the controversy, if you like, around these leaks or the messages that essentially CC'd in a journalist, that it is part of what they brand, this is what the White House is saying, a coordinated effort to distract from successful actions taken by President Trump. And Mark Austin will have more, of course, on that story at 5 o'clock this afternoon. Now, let's talk about Heathrow's shutdown, still continuing to make headlines. It saw planes, of course, grind to a complete halt in that airport on Friday following a fire at a nearby electric substation. Well, police have said this afternoon they are no longer treating the incident as suspicious. But a group representing more than 90 airlines, which sees the airport, is threatening to take legal action if a settlement is not reached. The chief executive of the Heathrow Airline Operations Committee has told Sky News he hoped the matter could be amicably sorted or settled at some point in time. But if not, taking Heathrow to court could be an option. Let's speak to Ronan Murphy. He's director of the Alton Aviation Consultancy. Very good afternoon to you, Ronan. Just talk us through what's gone on here, because clearly Heathrow made the decision to close down the airport, didn't they? But that had consequences, big financial consequences, for the airlines that use that airport.
Hey, Darren. Well, first of all, look, thanks for having us on. Yeah, look, we all saw what happened during the week. It was not good for the industry at large. But I think, it's still very early days. Everybody's a stakeholder here. I'm sure they're all looking for an amicable solution that makes sense for all parties. I'm sure there's a lot of law firms very excited by the prospect of going to court and taking some action here. But, very, very early still in this process, I think.
So is the bottom line in all of that, kind of just wait and see how this plays out? At the end of the day, there might be a lot of huff and puff, but it may well not go anywhere.
Look, I think the airlines continue to take stock of what the potential losses were, what the issues truly were and arose, and how much that's really cost them on the bottom line. And I'm sure they will be looking to Heathrow to help them out or some sort of settlement. But I think everybody is looking for the amicable solution. They all work together every day. I can't see the benefit of some huge suit happening.
Let's stay on aviation news, because another big story that we've been covering the last 24 hours or so, not least of all on our Money blog, is Ryanair. They've announced some type of kind of loyalty scheme, if you like, not something you associate with low-cost airlines. Just talk us through what Ryanair have announced.
Sure, yeah. Look, Ryanair have come out and somewhat headline grabbing, I would say, called Ryanair Prime, a first little baby steps, let's say, into loyalty. They're opening up to 250,000 customers, which in the scale of Ryanair, 185 million, I think, for their last financial year, passengers carried. It's a small number, but, it's a development. It's potentially trying to offer customers something new, a little bit add-on. That model has developed a lot over the last couple of years, a lot of business travelers. So I think they're just testing the market a little bit to see what the appetite is for a little bit more loyalty, which we mightn't traditionally see as a low-cost offering here in Europe.
Yeah, and it includes, I think, that you get free seat selection, maybe some insurance, as you say, pretty limited. But there is a model, isn't there, in the United States? And we have to remember Ryanair got a lot of inspiration, didn't it, from Southwest Airlines in the US, that these loyalty schemes are quite widespread there.
Correct. And look, we've seen the low-cost carriers in the US implement these schemes over the last 12 to 18 months as the passenger trends have kind of developed globally. So they're not a world first here from a low-cost carrier, but it's still quite small. Ryanair's bread and butter is still that low fare, low cost, get you there on time. I don't think they're significantly moving away from that today or in the last 24 hours. But potentially they're looking to broaden that offering and see how it's adapted by the market and see if there's some value there for them and for their passenger base.
OK, Ronan, really appreciate your time this afternoon. Ronan Murphy there, live in Dublin, the headquarters, of course, of Ryanair, Europe's largest airline. Now, let's bring you up to date with the rest of the business news today. And the government has announced the go-ahead for a multi-billion-pound plan to build new tunnels under the Thames River. It'll be known as the Lower Thames Crossing and will link Kent and Essex. It'll be around 14.5 miles in length and will connect to the existing road network via 2 tunnels. It's hoped the route will reduce congestion and improve journey times and could be opened, I emphasise the word here, could, given Britain's infrastructure, by as early as 2032. Now, the first ever autonomous construction robot has been deployed in the UK. As the number of construction workers in the country falls to its lowest on record, the introduction of advanced technology is aimed to show the industry is sustainable and forward-thinking. Well, earlier I caught up with Alexander Morris. He's Development Director at Bentall Green Oak, who told me about this rather nifty robot.
We are thinking about different ways to make the delivery of offices in a better place. And we happen to today be using a robot within a lift shaft to make sure that the quality of the product is as close as it can be for the future occupier using the space. So it's using the latest technology to improve and make things better. It is about thinking of health and safety. The robot is working in a space that doesn't need its safety barriers. It also, as you think about it, a person is drilling a hole within concrete. That's not a positive environment. And it's about creating a better place for people to work in the construction industry. And the robot needs to be controlled by others. So those that would be drilling the holes are actually sitting outside controlling the robot. So it's sort of creating a new job and making it better space in the industry. You do actually need the humans creating those finishing, but there are certain jobs that are absolutely ideal for robots, and they will take over. But the robot is creating precision, and precision makes things easier, more sustainable, less wastage. So actually, it's improving the future as much as the past. And yes, it will take some jobs, but then the robots have to be created. Then those create jobs, and it moves on as a better environment for delivering offices, etc. from our perspective. Using this robot we've got now, we actually first saw the prototype 2 years ago. So in 2 years, it's gone from a prototype to version 3. So it is improving very, very quickly. So I would suspect we're going to have a trajectory that will get quicker, and they will find ways to do work that is more challenging for a human. They will introduce robots to do it. So I think we're starting to see in the next 3 to 5 years a real increase in the use of robots. I mean, take examples of hoists, cranes, materials, movement. Robots will be able to do that in a defined way, in a very precise way, which is what we're trying to achieve, a better solution for the future.
Now, here's a story for you. Millwall FC has become the first British football club to launch its own mobile phone network. Yes, the club has announced that it plans to start from just 10 quid a month and will be powered by the 3 network, soon to be merged, of course, with Vodafone. Well, let's get more on this with Luke Wilson, Chief Commercial Officer at Millwall. Very good afternoon to you. I read in one of the papers today, a fan apparently said that April Fool's is next Tuesday. But this isn't a joke, is it?
No, it's not. I'd imagine that would be a fan of one of our rivals. So, no, thanks for that. But thanks for having us on, Darren. It's not an April Fool. No, we've seen a broader trend, I think, in Brazil with Flamenco, who've launched their own mobile network, also with AC Milan in Europe, and also with Besiktas. So other clubs have done this. I believe we're the first club to do it in the UK, but we think it's a really great way, really for us to embrace a new opportunity to kind of diversify our revenue streams, but also look at, strengthening our relationship with our fans. I think your previous guest talked a lot about loyalty programs, and actually that's commonplace in a lot of industries. We've seen the telco space that 30-day contracts and eSIMs really are the way forward now, and a lot of people are relishing that kind of freedom really to be able to move. So it's just something we're embracing and something we feel that we can kind of do. We have deep relationships with our fans already, so those relationships are probably stronger really with our fans, between the fans and the club, than they are with a supermarket or a broadband provider. So why can we not deliver an MVNO as well as they could?
And this is not just as much as you want to make it a loyalty brand. Anyone could take advantage of this, couldn't they?
Yeah, correct. I mean, obviously it's primarily targeted at fans of the club. The identifier for the network in the top right-hand corner will say Millwall, and obviously the revenue streams are helping us as a club. So we feel like it's a really great way for fans to be able to support the club and give part of their revenue for an everyday service provision back to the club. But ultimately, it's about also how we can reward the fans through that as well. There'll be loyalty rewards over time. So the longer you're a subscriber with us, the more kind of rewards you'll be eligible for, the more prize draws, things like that, discounts and different benefits like that. So yeah, it's obviously available to everyone, but I'd imagine it'd be primarily Millwall fans that would take it up in the first instance.
And as you say, this is about money fundamentally, isn't it? Not a bad thing, but it's about trying to get, as you say, a new revenue stream into the club. It is interesting, isn't it, that, as you say, and maybe this is what other companies should do, that when you've got strong brand value with a certain section of this country, that you kind of take advantage of that, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I take advantage is perhaps a little bit strong, but ultimately what we want to do is diversify our revenue streams as a club. The club released our financial report last week. We lost £90 million. All EFL clubs run at huge losses. We're one of the more sustainable and better run clubs, but all clubs are running at huge losses. We're always looking at new ways we can diversify those income streams. But ultimately, what we're also trying to do here is give back to the fans and reward the fans. So this is an everyday service provision. All of us have a mobile phone contract. If you do that with your club, you can be supporting the club, but you can also be earning benefits from that. So we'll be giving them rewards back through the programme as well. So we think it's a win-win all round. As I say, we've seen other clubs do it with great success in Europe and outside of Europe. So we don't think it's really too extravagant an idea from that perspective, but we really do think that hopefully it will help strengthen that bond we have with our fans as well.
And just very finally, Luke, mobile phones this month. I'm sure you're looking at other things. What else could Millwall be offering in the not too distant future?
Well, I'll have to leave you to find out when we do our next launch. But I mean, ultimately, as a club, we're trying to have a sort of very positive and progressive outlook on the commercial front. We're always exploring new ways to kind of drive revenue, but ultimately deliver value back to the fans. So hopefully there'll be something new on the horizon soon that we can talk about.
Indeed. Here's me, Luke, thinking you're going to say more goals, more balls in the back of the net. That's what you're going to offer them.
That's the one bit I can't guarantee, I'm afraid. The on-pitch performance is out of my control.
Luke, pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. Luke Wilson there from Millwall Football Club. Almost seemed like I knew something about football then, didn't it? Right, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up in just a couple of minutes. We're going to about garden centres, because across the country they have urged the Chancellor to water down on budget plans, explaining the impact it's having on places like this in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned.
It's like a football final with only one team on the pitch. This isn't just a call to vote, but a call to remember. The freedom fought for by the African National Congress.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A cyclone and 2 burst dams wiped out hundreds of generational homes.
This was the second dam that the floodwaters hit before it tore into Derna. We are in the heart of Nairobi, and we're watching as protesters were heavily tear gassed.
The sheer fearlessness and persistence of these guys is astonishing.
We help you understand the world with us. I remember going into the iconic Omdurman market in the heart of Sudan's capital for the first time since the war started. And this is what's left of it. Bullet holes through buildings, shelled balconies, bullet cases on the floor. I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories and the lives of millions of people. This is insane. This was a bustling residential area. So many friends who lived here. My most memorable interview was with a 15-year-old boy who'd survived being stranded on a migrant boat on its way from Senegal to the Canary Islands.
After 13 days, our food, water and fuel supply ran out.
I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News. Get the full story first. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah. The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
We are under Israeli military restrictions in terms of some of the things that we can film, but it's important to be in there. What a slow drive for the president as he approaches his golf club. 4 more years! Free wherever you get your news. I'm Mark Stone and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Very welcome back to Sky News. Now, I promised you gardens, but the connection with our garden guest isn't great, but you can read more about the pressure they're under when it comes to budgets and staffing costs on the Sky News blog, and we'll bring you that if we can get this guest. But we're going to talk about the spring statement tomorrow because it all comes down to that headroom, that wriggle room that we were talking about a little bit earlier. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has to play with. Ed Conway has, unsurprisingly, been looking at the figures with a short history of headroom.
The spring statement. Note the name, not an emergency budget, according to Rachel Reeves. You want to be clear about that. She says it's mostly just about updating the economic growth forecasters, but there are consequences. Have a look at this. This is showing you the economic growth forecast last time around. So 2% GDP, then 1.8 and 1.5 in the future years. We know that the economy has deteriorated since then. So we'll get the final numbers from the Office of Budget Responsibility, but just based on what other people are forecasting, that could be a really big downgrade from 2% to 1% this year alone. On top of that, it's not just growth. You've also got higher interest rates across the economy. Again, this is what was forecast for interest rates last time, just looking out in future decades. This is what the market currently thinks is going to happen with those interest rates out there in the market, higher. So you've got higher interest rates, which means higher debt interest costs. You've got weaker growth. Put that together, and you're talking about a bigger deficit. And why is that a problem? It's a problem because Rachel Reeves has these fiscal rules, and she has only a certain amount of headroom before she ends up breaking the fiscal rules. Now, that headroom, it goes up and down, depending on what you're doing, depending on how the economy is doing. Last time around, when Jeremy Hunt was looking at these figures, it was about £13.6 billion. But then the economy actually improves in the run-up to the Chancellor's first budget, this Chancellor's first budget, and so it went up there. Then she decided to spend a lot of that money. She didn't pocket it, she spent it on more investments, more spending in the NHS, and so that took it down to £9.9 billion. Quite small as headroom goes, and we know what happened next. The weaker economy, those higher interest rates, that means that headroom has basically disappeared. So although it's just a forecast update, that has consequences. She would potentially break her fiscal rules if she didn't do something about it. So what can she do? Well, she can't. Well, she said she's not going to raise taxes. She could throw out her fiscal rules. She said she's not going to do that. They're ironclad, apparently. So instead, The only other big thing she could do is change the spending plans. Now, this is the spending plans that were forecast last time around. Jeremy Hunt just wanted weak spending in the coming years before the election. Rachel Reeves said, in October at least, 1.4, 1.3, 1.3% in the future. So she could trim that, and if she brought it down to maybe just a bit above where Jeremy Hunt wanted it, 1.1%, that would save about £5 billion. £5 billion. So back to the headroom, that you could basically whittle away through those spending cuts, OK? Gets you to zero, so you've still got no headroom. You still need to do something else. What comes in there? The welfare cuts we've just heard about recently. So welfare cuts, that could save another £5 billion, certainly some consequences for recipients. And then on top of that, you could bring back another £5 billion or so by switching some of the money from development assistance through to defence, just due to an accounting flip, really. But nonetheless, that helps out. So you're back to £10 billion. And that is likely to be one of the main focuses here, rebuilding the public finances. But make no mistake, although it's just forecasts, these are certainly very consequential changes in the economic forecast.
And you can join Ed, Sophie Ridge and Beth with full coverage of the Spring Statement from 11 tomorrow. I'm back on Thursday with Business Live. Do join me then if you can. Up next, it is Mark Austin with the New Hour from 5. Have a very good evening.